towards the end of the program, she just stopped me one day and she was like, you are going to lead yoga retreats. I know it. I have a vision. I can see it. You're going to go abroad and lead yoga retreats. So here's like a list of a couple of names of, people in like Costa Rica and Nicaragua. It's Lacey here with the Coffee Witching Hour. I know it has been a minute since I've recorded one of these episodes, so I am here today bringing you maybe a little bit of a short one, but in today's episode, we're going to take a deep dive into my personal history of teaching yoga. I'm going to talk a little bit about why I came to the practice and where my teaching has evolved over the years. And then I want to bring in a little practice for us to finish with today. So if that sounds good to you, then grab your cozy chair, grab your coffee, and come and join me. So I started practicing yoga officially in 2017. I had practiced a little bit off and on before that point, but I would say the time when it really took off and I started doing it as a daily practice was 2017, when I was away for a summer. I was doing an internship in Colorado, and it was my first time really living away from home, and I didn't really know anyone, but I did have a gym membership, and I got started with gym yoga in Colorado, and in actually a lot of gyms today. There are really, really good yoga teachers. There really are. It's not where my practice evolved to eventually I think I did become a little bit snobby and was like, oh, you can't get good yoga in a gym, it's just gym yoga. But I really do believe that it is not true. Like, I am going against what I used to think before, and I don't think it's true that gym yoga is like a separate thing. I really, really felt that my first yoga class was amazing. Like, it was one of those experiences where I just got hooked in instantly. I remember feeling like I was like dancing, and it was this like, this mixture of this embodied practice along with this dose of spirituality and all of these messages to slow down, to pay attention to your body, to notice and really be in this physical experience. And I just really, really loved it from the beginning. So that summer, I spent the whole summer practicing yoga, going to the mountains, doing yoga in the mountains, like yoga at Red Rocks. I did that summer, and I was just hooked at that point. It took a few years until I actually signed up for teacher training, just because I was finishing college, had a lot on my plate. But eventually, once I moved to Boston to do grad school there, I was like, this is the time, this is the place, I'm gonna do it. So I decided to take the first year that I lived in Boston just to studio shop, really, to go around the city and try different studios, which was an absolutely amazing experience. So I would get like the 30-day pass at different studios, and there were so many at that time in Boston. Oh my gosh, okay. So I'm wrong. Okay, so my bad. 2017 is when I started teaching. 2013 was when I started practicing. So this is an entire 5 years. It was like, I know that didn't sound right. So 2013 was when I was in Colorado. 2017 is when I actually started teaching yoga. So it was 2015 when I moved to Boston. So that number of years, so like 2 years in Boston. That first year, as I was saying, I was going to the different studios and just really getting a feel for the different types of practices. There were studios where there were some really big name yoga teachers, which I really enjoyed and appreciated getting that wisdom and experience. But I was like, no, my favorite yoga was hip hop yoga. Like, at that time, and I am laughing a little bit, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Especially like at that time, I just felt like The experience that I wanted then was like something like sweaty and something like spiritual at the same time, but like sweaty, spiritual, and raunchy, like this like really cool like combination that's like you're in and out, but it's this experience. And that was the one that I went for, and thankfully there was a lot of that, and it was pretty cheap in the city. There were like a lot of like $5 hip-hop yoga classes that would pop up, that were just wall-to-wall mats, where it was just this like amazing experience where there were so many people, and I loved like the anonymity of it. Like I would just go by myself, not know a single person, and I just wanted to like forget my name. Like that was my de-stressing experience, which like, I mean, maybe other people went to the club at that point, but no, for me, it was like hip hop yoga was everything. Of course, I did do other styles besides just hip hop, but like that was the one I gravitated to. I did have the option of doing my teacher training at the studio where I like to do hip hop yoga, but it was a little farther of a walk from me. And I didn't have a car in Boston, so I didn't really see myself walking like a full 2 miles every day just to do yoga teacher training. Although it was nice every now and then to go to that hip hop yoga studio, but it was a little bit farther out. I decided to do my yoga teacher training. I was between 2 studios really, because there were just so many teacher trainings in Boston, but I was between 2 studios. One was the more where more of the better known teachers were, and the other was, I don't know, it kind of felt like a homier, like more neighborhood friendly, family friendly really type of yoga studio that was also in the same neighborhood where I was living. I was living in Fenway at the time, and both of those were kind of around the same area. I ended up going with the kind of more family centered, like neighborhood yoga vibe studio, just because I got a better like gut feeling from it. And so that was Coolidge Corner Yoga. That's where I did my yoga teacher training for my 200 hour. It was with the New School of Yogic Arts. And I had 2 lead teachers. One was Laura, the other was Andrew, and both of them just brought such a unique perspective to the training. And I really feel like I got lucky because they were so devoted. Both of them were so devoted. Laura, the first time I met her, I thought she looked so intense. Like, not that she looked intense, but that she looked at you intensely in the eyes whenever she was talking. And she was vegan. I was too at the time, and she was very like compassionate, but also incredibly intense and serious about her love of yoga. And her sequences were really fun and spiritual. Like, it was this, she would teach very poetically, so it was almost like she was like giving a sermon when she was teaching. And then Andrew had a completely different vibe, different style of teaching. I didn't gravitate towards his like asana practice quite as much, but his spirituality, like the way he taught spirituality, was so eye-opening and so interesting. And he studied with like some monks for a while, and he did a lot of kirtan. So we did a lot of chanting. We did a lot of chanting with Andrew, and a lot of just dissecting the Bhagavad Gita and the sutras, which, you know, you get some of that in every yoga teacher training, but I think with Andrew, it was like he was more invested in that like spiritual part of it. And I guess I didn't realize until after the training how unique that was to have, someone who has that approach and that kind of in-depth knowledge around like the spiritual side of yoga. So I had those 2 as my teachers. That was kind of the foundation. I finished my 200 hour, my end of the first semester of my second year of my master's program. So I spent the last semester they had an add-on like teaching certification, because I don't think we got quite as much teaching, like hands-on teaching experience during that yoga training. It was more about learning and listening, and it was a pretty big cohort of yoga students. So they did have this add-on teaching certificate that I did that the second semester as I was finishing my master's degree, which was just like kind of getting my feet wet, teaching a lot of students at Harvard, really. I didn't teach at studios yet at that point, but it was just teaching other students who are often beginners and hadn't practiced yoga a lot. But yeah, just kind of like teaching in my community. And then this is where I took the really big leap, I think. I went to Myanmar for the summer. I booked a one-way ticket. Well, it was for the summer, technically, for a summer internship, but I had a one-way ticket and I didn't have any plans after that. So I was just gonna see where life took me, I guess. But I went to Myanmar. It was a connection I made in France years ago when I was studying abroad. It's one of those connections, like, you know, when you meet someone and you're just like, wow, there's really something about this person. I don't know what it is, but there's like something about this person. It was one of those things. Like I met this girl doing yoga on summer solstice in Monaco, but she was the host brother's girlfriend of someone in my study abroad program. And this girl in the study abroad program was like, oh, I think you would really like my host brother's girlfriend. Do you mind if I invite her to Monaco this weekend? And so we went and did yoga there, and I just had this feeling, and so I stayed in contact with her. I mean, I thought she was the coolest person ever, because she was like dating this French man, about to go to Bali to do her teacher training, and then just moving to Myanmar and starting a yoga studio like it was no big deal whatsoever. So I kind of had that in the back of my mind, that she had this yoga studio in Myanmar. And Laura, who I mentioned, was one of my teachers. She, towards the end of the program, she just stopped me one day and she was like, you are going to lead yoga retreats. I know it. I have a vision. I can see it. You're going to go abroad and lead yoga retreats. So here's like a list of a couple of names of, you know, people in like Costa Rica and Nicaragua. In case you want to like spend the summer there, you should reach out to them. Well, then I kind of, in the back of my mind, I was like, wait, I know someone also with a kind of yoga retreat situation. And so I emailed Jojo, the girl in Myanmar too. And I didn't expect her to even reply to me. I didn't expect her to remember me or anything, but she was like, actually, we're looking for an intern. So I said yes. So I spent the summer in Myanmar. This was my first time teaching in a yoga studio. And oh my gosh, it was such an amazing experience. So I was teaching for an expat community and was kind of organizing a lot of like events for the studio, like a chocolate tasting event and some baking events, because I was also working in their kitchen. I was their like intern baker, trying to help pilot some new baked goods for their vegan cafe. So I got to coordinate a lot of really cool events that summer and just doing yoga full time for the first time in my life. And it was just such a different experience from being in school, which was everything that I had done to that point in my life was just school. And so it was just so different, and it was hard. It was really, really hard at moments too. Like living in Myanmar, I did not think it was the easiest experience for me. I mean, I had a lot of like, you know, street dogs chase me, and I had like a sink fall on my foot and like lizards crawling out of my cereal box. And I think it was eye-opening for me in that sense. And I did cry a few times that summer just because I'm like, does this get easier? But it was such a good experience for me. Like, the teaching itself was, oh my gosh, amazing. I just fell in love with teaching when I was out there. And then after that moved to Vienna, I was like, I have to keep teaching. So even though I was really living in a village that was about an hour outside of Vienna, I was like, I have to find a way to make it into the city to teach. And so I did. So I found a studio that I really liked in Vienna. It was called Bali Yoga in Vienna. And I started teaching there twice a week, which is a lot for an hour commute just to get there. Yeah, if you're doing the math, I spent more time traveling than teaching each time I taught, but to me, it was completely worth it. And it was an interesting experience too, because for most of the people I taught in Myanmar, well, English was often their first language, for most at least. But in Vienna, German was their first language. And so everyone did speak English, but some people didn't speak it quite as well. But it was, it was the norm to teach in English in Vienna because it was such an international city. Kind of weird to think about now that people were teaching in English in Vienna. I don't know. I mean, there were people teaching in German too, but yeah, that they hired me only being able to speak English. But yeah, I did teach in English there, but I think I had to do a lot of like demoing since English wasn't their first language. And it's just, I guess, an interesting experience to teach internationally and like see how things are different. I moved back to Boston after that and spent from 2018 when I moved back, so spring of 2018 until spring of 2020, so 2 full years in Boston, full-time teaching yoga. So after Vienna, I did move back to Boston, but I also spent a summer in Paris. I didn't teach that summer. I tried to. I contacted a few studios, but I guess because I was only there for like a month-ish, it wasn't enough time to, in their opinion, because I didn't have much of a reputation as a yoga teacher at that point, it wasn't enough time for me to teach long-term for any of the studios. So I couldn't get any teaching gigs when I was in Paris, but I did practice a lot, and same experience. It was just interesting to see how yoga was practiced and taught. But when I got back to Boston, officially, so end of summer of 2018, that's when I really started teaching full time. And I did have some like consulting gigs here and there, some editing that was pretty consistent, but I was really teaching full time. And it was such an experience. I could do an entire episode just on that hustle in Boston. And maybe I will get into more of those details in depth, but I want to leave it at there for today. This was kind of the part 1. We'll be moving into part 2 of teaching next week because I feel like Boston onward is kind of the next real big era in my teaching. So that's kind of like where I started, and I can't wait to share with you where things go. But before we leave, I just want to share one quick practice with you. So the foundation of everything in yoga is the breath. And so what we're gonna do to end this practice is just a little bit of breath work. And I wanna do some breath work that is from way back, that I've been doing from the very beginning of practicing yoga. And that is just diaphragmatic breathing. It's super simple, and we're just going to do it together. Diaphragmatic breathing is really good for calming the nervous system. And it's just inflating and deflating the belly. The ribs as well will move a bit. But we're just going to close our eyes You can connect a hand to the belly, connect a hand to the low ribs if that feels good for you. And just breathe in to inflate. And breathe out to deflate. Breathe in. And breathe out. And breathe in. And breathe out. Well, thank you so much for listening today. I know I've been sick the last few weeks with some colds, flus, norovirus, all the things. We got hit really hard in January. So again, apologies that I have not been more present with all of you. And that and some snow days as well, which the last YouTube class that I filmed was during the snow day, that snow week. But okay, well, hopefully we stay well for a while so I'm able to bring you part 2, and I hope to see you all soon.